Good morning, afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our September Mongli Maduro webinar. We are so happy. We are so happy that we have Tirzo Martha here, because Tirzo, he's a very busy person. He's traveling a lot, and I think my colleague Leanne, she tried for over a year to book him, and she almost gave up. But now he's here in our virtual space. Well, as you know, Tirzo is one of Curaçao's leading artists, and he's the recipient of various awards. One is the Cola de Brod Prize, which he received in 2009, and the other one is the Wilhelmina Ring 2019. He's an installation artist. He integrates all kinds of recycled materials in his artworks and also everyday objects. And this has a lot to do with his social engagements. He will talk to us today about his objects, the community, his social vision. I know this will be a fascinating presentation, so I will hand over the virtual mic to Tirzo in a few minutes. The presentation will be in English, but at the end we'll have a Q&A session, and there you are free to ask your questions in Dutch, Papiament, or maybe even another language. So, Tirzo, if you're ready, we can start.
Okay, thank you for this introduction. And I want to welcome everyone to this lecture that I'm going to give. For me, it's very important to create a little bit more insight in my practice. And I hope that I can bring all this 30 years of experience into a half-hour presentation. It's quite difficult, but I will try to do my best as much as possible. To start, I would like to tell a little bit about me, about my work, and then we will step over to some images of projects, works I made during these 30 years of practice. To start, I think it's very important to make clear that as a youngster, I wasn't focusing on art. It wasn't my ambition to become an artist. Although my mother, who likes to draw a lot, most of the time has been trying to stimulate me to also do some drawing, but I've never had any feeling, anything with any connection with the visual arts. So at a certain moment in my life, because of my upbringing, which was a very social aware one, where my father was leader of a group of youngsters to help give them guidance and support in order to make something out of their lives. We also had visiting children who were living in one or other in institution, and they were coming for the weekend at our house to stay there with us. So my whole life I've been confronted with the social conditions of the island. And at a certain point, it was very obvious for me to think about what are my ambitions and what are my possibilities in order to create conditions or to support or to help develop new and much more prosperous social conditions on the island. So based on this, I went out for kind of a research in order to find out what would be the best thing suiting for me. I didn't want to become a social worker because, yes, I believe that they are also, very limited in their possibilities, because they can, fill in all kind of forms with the people. They can have all kind of talks with them, but at the end, it's about action. It's about what you do in order to make people move and make it possible for themselves. So at a certain point, I start realizing that one thing that's very important for a lot of people is communication. And communication in the sense that they want to express themselves, they want to communicate their problems, they want to communicate their needs and urgencies that are part of their structure in life, their surviving mode, and so on and so on. So based on this, at the first, I noticed that that maybe people would like to do something where they can show off their problems without saying any words, because as you know, in Curacao, people, they don't talk as easy like as they want to. So most of the time, people were like getting angry, or in small groups, they will express their anger, their disappointments, and all of that. But when they have to communicate this towards a larger group, they didn't have enough courage to do this. So at a certain point, I start looking at this, and I see that people start expressing themselves with their body, the body language, how they talk, how they move, and most of the time, even how they wear their clothes. So based on this, I thought that maybe if I could have a certain way or tool that I could use with people by using their bodies and all of that, they can communicate much more better what their problems, their hopes, and all of that are. So this brought me to the idea that maybe I should do something with fashion. So in the beginning, I start doing some things with fashion myself. And at a certain point, I thought that, okay, maybe this is what I must study. So I went to the Netherlands to study fashion because for me, I was convinced that the way people can use their clothes, they can also communicate whatever they want to communicate in a much more direct way. And it can be very expressive towards others confronted with this. At a certain point, I realized that the one thing that was a problem with fashion was that you were always depending on the body of a person. And for me, that was kind of a limitation. And immediately I start thinking about other possibilities in which you can express yourself. One of them is what we call performance art. And I will show you I hope you can see this. So when I started with performing arts. And
sorry, we don't see your presentation yet, Tirzo.
You don't see it? Let me.
No.
Not yet.
You know how to do share screen, please?
Yes, I did it, and I was seeing it, and then.
Oh, maybe try it again, or if not, I maybe can try to do it for you. Okay, I'll do it.
You do it?
Which screen again? This one? And then it's here. I can put here. Yeah, I have to go back to the beginning. I think so, yes.
Yes? Okay.
You see it on the screen? Yeah?
Yes, I see it, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so what I started doing is, like I already said, performances, and these performances, they were much more closer towards the real conditions of the people. So the way they live, the way they survive, the way they deal with their problems, and how they, as much as possible, try to get attention from other people or the government or whatever their aim are. So I started with these performances. For example, this one. This work is, for example, because of some conditions that I've experienced working with people, because I must say two things are very important in my work, or even three things. One is that I work the whole time with people, so I'm not like the cliche of artists that are isolated in their studios and working alone and all of that. I am much more of working with people, because by doing that, I have much more insight in how people deal with these different themes, conditions, situation, interpretation, and so on and so on. The other thing that I think is also very important to mention in my work is that my work is not recycling art. It's nothing at all with recycling art. Everything I have is material that I buy, and I build these artworks. And the third thing that I believe it's very important also to mention is that my work is not about symbolism. So in my work, it's not like green represents something or blue represents the heaven or sea or all of that. It's purely based on the objects, the conditions, and so on in the experience of the people. So how people experience them and how they deal with these conditions in order to survive. So in the case of, for example, this performance, you can see that I'm in a space, a dog cage that I share with a dog, and that's based on some conditions that I've encountered by working with some people, how they were living and how they were trying to survive in conditions that were not as best as possible for them as human beings to survive on the island. Next slide. This is part 2 of the same performance. The title of this work was Caribbean Education. And this was something that for me was very important, because it was about how children, how they have to survive and try to make the best out of their living, their studying, and all of that, living under conditions that were very poorly. And the reason why I did this is because in those days, there was this huge fight between the government, and people were not happy because they couldn't find houses, they couldn't get support in order to create better conditions in their housing system, structures, and so on and so on. And then that was the basic idea of these type of works. Next slide. This is also one of those performances. This one was about the moment that they were much talking about slavery and being oppressed and liberating yourself and creating better conditions for yourself. We did this performance at the monument for slavery revolution in Curacao. And this performance was entitled Tell Me the Truth. And it's about the big search of people towards the knowledge and to get much better insight in the real history behind slavery on the island. By the way, these are all old works. So these are works in the 90s, I believe, 1990s, after 1992, I believe all these work are. And later on, you will see what the more new work that I made. Next slide. This is also based on the same idea. The title of this character is Captain Caribbean, and Captain Caribbean, as a result of traveling in the Caribbean, I have been doing some project with people from all the islands, different islands in the Caribbean. And one thing that was very remarkable is the surviving skills of the people, their dreams, their hopes that they have. And one thing that was very remarkable on most of these islands is that you don't have any McDonald's, but you have everywhere Kentucky Fried Chicken. So Kentucky Fried Chicken was kind of the empowerment, the powerful identity that you can see in all these islands. And based on that, I developed this character, Captain Caribbean, who is kind of a superhero, but a superhero without superpowers. The only power that this superhero has is that he has read a lot more, he has educated himself much more better, and he has traveled a little bit more than the rest. So he had much more references in order to create solutions for the social problems living in the different communities in the Caribbean. Next slide. This is also one of those performances of Captain Caribbean. This is also one of the performances. And this, for example, is the, because I did this project with a lot of youngsters, and there was this huge discussion between heritage, their slavery heritage, and the new, much more American-based heritage from the gangster rap, being gangsters, and all of that. And together with some youngsters, I did this performance. Next slide. This is also a performance of this Captain Caribbean. Next slide. Also another Captain Caribbean performance. And as you can see, these performances, they are very public. So they are done in public spaces. For example, this one done in Amsterdam. And this was part of a series entitled Captain Caribbean Conquers Europe. And the idea was that Captain Caribbean goes to the Netherlands, Germany, England, France, and Portugal, and there he will do the different performances. And this was the one in Amsterdam. Next slide. Still in Amsterdam with the performance. We also got support of the police in Amsterdam at a certain point, because they really enjoyed this performance. This is another performance done in Portugal, also based on this, this Caribbean heritage history thing. And in this case, it was about the dissolvement of the Antilles, and and the flag that has been waving in the air for quite a long time for the Dutch Antilles was gone, and we became all separate autonomous islands in the Dutch kingdom. Next slide. This is also part of a performance done, I believe this was in 2005. Back to the first slide. Yes, you can go full screen. Okay, in the meantime, I'll tell you something about this. This is also a performance done in the United States. And it's also about, yeah, basically the same thing, being very powerful and having all this idea of who you are and what you're doing and what you're worth and all of that. But at the same time, you are like insecure on the waves of life, as a matter of fact. So yeah, this is part of a performance installation I did in 2005, I believe, in the States, where I got a prize, Reed Foundation Award. And for this award, I had to go to the States and do a residency for a period and exhibition and all of that. And in that period, I made this artwork. Next slide. Yeah, this piece is also yeah, based on the same, again, people talking about their history, their forefathers, their heritage and all of that. And based on the idea of you have in Africa these power figures. Those are like wooden sculptures filled with nails, iron nails. And in this case, what I did is, instead of using iron nails, I used Afro combs, because yeah, it was the thing about identity and how people deal with their looks in order to fit the expected identity. Next slide. This is also an example of yeah, of the work that I make. I was invited to be part of an exhibition at the Brooklyn Museum in New York, and at this exhibition I made this art piece, and I made it together with 30 ladies from Brooklyn who have never been in the museum. And these ladies, they are ladies who they bake cakes and they make wedding dresses and all of that. So I did this project together with them, where they were making artifacts that I could use in this art piece. And then together at the opening, we went to this opening of the exhibition. And for them, it was laughing, because at first they said, "Oh, you were crazy. What are you going to do with us, all this in the museum?" And when they were all standing there in front of the art piece, they were laughing and enjoying this piece that I've made. Next. There's the same thing. This is also, as you can see, a composition of all kind of household objects, chairs and TV and tables and all of that. And this also reflects, yeah, the way how we deal in the Caribbean with, yeah, we want to move and go towards better future, better conditions. And so you have a lot of people fleeing their country. For example, a lot of people flee South America or the other Caribbean islands, and they come to Curacao because they want to get the Dutch nationality so that they can move to the Netherlands, with the idea that they can get a better future, where they can get money and have a better life. So based on that, I made this piece where you, for example, there's a video in this piece where you can hear the voice of Hugo Chavez, from the former president of Venezuela, telling his soldiers to go and defend the island. And then in this video, you can see that the Venezuelan Navy, they pull Curacao all the way to the Netherlands, and they anchor the island on the coast of the Netherlands. This work was presented in Germany. Next slide, please. In 2005, I was asked to design a coin because of the celebration of Queen Beatrix from the Netherlands, as she was celebrating 25 years of her as Queen of the Netherlands. So I've been asked to design a coin. This was very crazy because I'm used to making very big artworks, and now I was supposed to make a design that is very small. The idea behind this coin was that I wanted to represent the work that the Queen was doing in those days, and even nowadays, to help support children to get a better life and a better future. Next slide. There's also an assignment I got from, I think, the University of Amsterdam, where they wanted me to make a portrait of Alice Juliana, who was a writer, archaeologist from Curacao. And yes, this is what I made as a portrait of him, with all the objects that he uses in his daily work. Next slide. Here's another example of a sculpture that I've made. This is also, I think, 2007, 2008. All made out of objects. Next slide. Yes, this is also an installation in this case that I've made for Tropen Museum in Amsterdam. And in this installation, there's also a video included of a performance of Captain Caribbean. And yeah, it's the same. It's about trying to how people deal with their history, their identity, and how they try to make everything sounds better than it is. So so yeah, based on that, I made this this work. Next next slide. Okay, the next slide. This is also the same big installation I made quite some time ago. Yeah, it's also this was much more about religion, how people yeah, how they deal with religion, and sometimes they are very unrealistic in how they deal with it, and how they put their hopes towards something that they are not sure that it's going to be happening, and that it's going to be having an added value for their own development. Next slide. This is also the same thing, like I said just now. It's about how people deal with their daily lives. Sometimes I was shocked that some people, they have like this very beautiful big cars, and when you go to their houses, they don't even have a very good roof on their house, and you have like 10 people sleeping in one room. And yeah, most of the time I'm asking these people, why do you invest so much money in a car instead of investing money in your house? So yeah, based on all these reactions and interactions, I made this work where the car has become a kind of their ultimate paradise and resort of hope and future. Next slide. There's the same thing. This was part of a work I made in 2009 in the biennial of Havana in Cuba. And the same thing again, I made this work together with residents of Havana. And I got all these materials and stuff from them. And we built this installation with them. It's about tourism and how tourism is also very sometimes very destructive. I noticed this also in Curacao, that, for example, the local culture has been defined now, or redefined now, much more based on the taste of the tourists, and not based on the reality of the island. So that is something that I've been investigating and doing a lot of work surrounding it, how this tourism can be very destructive for the islands in the Caribbean. Next. This work, you can go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay. This work is also based on how people deal with their daily lives. For example, these cabinets were used to where people used to show their best things they have in their house. You know, the imagery or a photograph of a family studying abroad. Their beautiful set of dishes and all of that, in order to show people that they may be poor, but they still have the most the best things in their house. So based on that idea of how people tend to show off, again, just like in the case of the car, I made this work in to show how people deal and how much added value people add to these possessions. The next slide. Next one. This is also an installation that I made, and I made this also together with a retirement home in the Netherlands. This was quite some time ago, and at the Museum of Modern Art in Arnhem. I made this piece together with these people. So all these materials I collected together with them and made this piece. Next slide. Okay, based on this, all these social projects, you do encounter people that are very talented, young people that have a lot of quality in order to do something very creative with their lives, you know, that they can develop a career as an artist, visual artist, or whatever creativity they have, they can develop it. So in 2006, me together with David Bade, we started this institute in Curacao. It's called IBB, Instituto Buena Vista, and it's a preparatory training for youngsters who have the ambition to do a creative study. These youngsters, when they come to the IBB, they don't get only guidance and support and teaching about their talent or the qualities they have, but we also try to give them guidance concerning discipline, language, because when you go to study abroad, especially when most of the students, they go to study in the Netherlands, you need to speak Dutch, You're going to land in a totally new culture where you have to adapt yourself. So with all these things, we support them in order to make it happen. So we help them with the preparing of a portfolio so that they can get into these art academies. Once in the art academies, we keep giving them guidance. And after the art academy, we also support them in order to make it possible for them to start a practice as an artist or a creative person. Next slide. Here you can see a session where some of the students are having a drawing class. We have per year around 35 to 40 students studying there. Next slide. It's also a session, me teaching, having a talk with students. This institute is doesn't have a big team. We don't have a big team. We have a very small team. And we have created a condition in which we invite artists and residents to come to the island, and these artists and residents, they will also teach to the students. This way, you also create a much broader, bigger insight and references for the students in order to, make them have much more clarity in what are all the possibilities in a career as a visual artist. Because you can become a painter, sculptor, you can draw, you can make installations, but maybe you want to become a art historian, or maybe you want to become a curator, or maybe you want to do something in art handling, or you want to start a gallery. So by doing this, we create all these possibilities for these youngsters to have as much as possible references and insight in what the possibilities are for a career in the arts. Next slide. We also do a lot of community projects with the students so that they get much more aware of our responsibility towards our community. So it's very important for them also to be aware that when you want to study something, it's not about studying, getting a diploma, getting a good job, earning a lot of money, and buying a new house and beautiful car. No, it's about developing yourself and also helping and giving contribution towards the developing of your community. Because one thing that in all my years of working in Curacao, I have seen as something as a big problem on the island is everybody flees the island. Nobody wants to come back and do something to develop the island. And most of the time people say, yes, I don't come back because I cannot get a work. I say, yes, but then go and create your own work, because I believe that's the best thing that you can do in order to make the island much more powerful. And that's why we always do these community projects with the students, where they work with the people. And in this case, they made this huge mural in Otrobanda together with residents from Otrobanda. Next slide. This is the same. We do work a lot with schools. Schools, they do come to the institute where they get workshops, and we get them in contact with art, because art is very, very important. Most of the time, people underestimate the power of creativity, the power of art for a community, because culture, and people doesn't realize that with culture, you can measure the quality and the level of your community. Because in the culture, you can see how people have developed their way to survive, their way to visualize, their way to develop possibilities in their existence, in the way of working, living, surviving, and so on and so on. So that's why we, as much as possible, try to involve schools and all of that in these projects. Next. This is also one of those situations that I was talking about working with people. In 2015, to get me and David Bade were invited to do an action on the streets in Havana, Cuba, where we made 3 sculptures together with street vendors who were selling fruits in the streets, and they asked us to do this project together with them. And we went to Havana, and we were literally building these sculptures on the street. So we were welding and doing everything on the streets together with these street vendors, but also together with passerbys who, who was interested, and they came and helped with the building of these sculptures. Interesting was also that you were invited to go into the houses of different people and see how they were living, how they were surviving. For example, it's not like you can go to a hardware store and buy your materials, but in Cuba, we really had to get everything from the streets. So people were taking us to places so very weird where we could get our materials. Next slide. Another look at the sculpture. Next slide. As a part of what we've been doing in Curacao with the Institute, the IBB, in 2016, as a celebration of 10th anniversary of the Institute in Curacao, we did this huge project in the Netherlands. It's a collaboration between IBB and Kunsthal Rotterdam, a museum, a very well-known international museum in Rotterdam. We did this project called All You Can Art. And All You Can Art is basically the same thing what we are doing at the IBB in Curacao. So we have this summer school where students, youngsters can come and follow lessons, classes with artists. But at the same time, we are doing community projects and other partners like Psychiatric Institute, a retirement home. By the way, the IBB in Curacao is based on the terrain of a psychiatric clinic, which we have been working for years now with. So this same structure that we've been using in Curacao, we also have it in the Netherlands right now with All You Can Art. And this is, for example, a kind of performance that we did in the Rotterdam Carnival in 2016. Next slide. Here you can see the big installation in Kunsthal Rotterdam. So this is like a very big studio where you have artists working, you have students doing their work, and at the same time you have an exhibition of artworks, and in this case that are part of the collection of the IBB in Curacao, which is for us very important because that is something that we have been working very hard on, is to create a great collection of artworks, contemporary art for the island of Curacao. And this huge collection, we consider it also as the new heritage for the islands because, if you want to develop art on the island, if you want to develop art education on the island, if you want to develop culture on the island, then you need to create the conditions, the references in order to make it happen. And one of the details in these conditions and references is the big art collection that we have at the Institute in Curacao. Next slide. Here you can see participants at a lecture in Rotterdam. Next slide. And like I said, just like in Curacao, where we go into the neighborhoods and we do projects with the people from the neighborhoods. Here in the Netherlands, we also do the same thing with All You Can Art. This was a van, and with this van, we went to neighborhoods, and there we did projects with people living in the neighborhoods. Next slide. This is a performance by summer school students. So the students at All You Can Art in Rotterdam. And one thing that's very important to say is that we involve all the alumni students from IBB Curacao in all of our projects. And this is also to create much more possibilities and to give them much more tools in order to find out what they would like to do with their careers as artists. Next slide. Yeah, these are the following works, are works that I've made between 2016 and up till today. So we can, because of time, I think it's good for us to go through these slides so that we can show them. So all these works are sculptures that I've made in these past, like say 5 years. And yeah, you can see the different materials that I use, the different techniques. See all these works, but still the idea of using the combination of different objects and materials together. For me, it's very important to keep on playing with the work because most of the time I've been told that my work is not typically Curacao, but the work is very much more typically Curacao than people think, because it's all the times based on the mentality, the way people deal with their daily lives, the objects that are part of their surviving structures, and so on and so on. For example, this one is a piece I made for the Hague in the Netherlands, and this piece is yeah, you can see all the objects that are very traditional on the island. For example, these ones also, the concrete bricks used in the building construction in Curacao, the half-constructed constructions on the island, not only in Curacao, but also in the Caribbean. The cages, the iron cages. This is a piece I made in also for a public park here in art park here, art, how you call it? A park for sculptures in the Netherlands. And as you can see, it's everything that looks like wood is actually bronze. These are also newer works that I made in 2020, so last year. So as you can see, the work, there's a big variety in the work. So it can be from standing sculpture to, yeah, these wall objects that I make. I call them wall objects. This one too. It's also a sculpture made last year. And this is the most recent I've made, is for an exhibition here in Amsterdam. It's called Art Zuid, and there I have this sculpture that I've made. It's made totally out of iron and tire and wood, and the cooking pots. Okay, I think that was all the time I had for my talk. I think half an hour, even more than half an hour. So yes, I can say that it's very important for me to keep on doing this work, and I hope that, because the big dream is to create a new generation of artists for the island of Curacao. And these past 15 years, we've been doing that with the Institute. And we are seeing right now that we have around 90 students that have gone abroad to study. And a lot of them are doing very, very, very well. So I hope that in about 10 years, I can, me together and David, we can give the Institute over to this younger generation, and also with a new heritage for the island of Curacao. Thank you.
Dank je, Tirzo. Masha dank je. Thank you very much for your time and your very enlightening lecture. For me, for sure, because I'm a total newbie in the art. I look at art and I like it, and as you know, and I think one of the most important things that you shared with us today, which we also wanted to share with our attendees, is especially to give us more insight in your work and your practice, how you come about to do the art you make, you create. And I thought it was very interesting to hear from you that you were actually thinking of being a social worker, but became an artist. And I'm interested into maybe we could go further into it, into how you thought that actually being an artist would give you more options than a social worker. I guess some of us may think, well, as a social worker, you can do more. Another thing that I find very interesting that you also brought forward is to make sure that people understand that your art is not based on symbolism. It's very straightforward. And in my sense, when I look at it, it can be sometimes very confrontational. Either you like it or you don't like it, but also the message you bring forward can sometimes be very much into your face. So in that sense, before I see we have questions, but I would like to use my privilege as a host to kick off with the first question. Um, Especially because we have at the Mongi Maduri Library, we are very happy that you're always very diligent in bringing us all the articles and documentation and everything of your work. And especially reading or hearing your presentation and listening that you're very social committed and you try to bring forward the message of how the development in our society. And I was wondering, looking at this, that we as a library are bringing information about the social cultural development in Curacao. I'm thinking when one reads the documentation about your work or when one sees your work, in what sense can you say people can understand the message you're bringing? Is it very much free to interpretation, or is it a way that you say there is a certain guidebook or certain concepts that people can use to understand your work?
Okay, I believe that the only guidance in my work for the people is their own conscious and their own experience and references, because I believe that we have, all of us, we have our own experiences, and based on our experiences, we have the tendency to judge things or to give interpretation to things. So that's why for me, it's very important that the composition I make with the objects starts a discussion between the objects and the people itself based on their own experience. Because something that and that's the reason why I work a lot with people, is that it's very remarkable that sometimes we do believe that everybody thinks or have a interpretation that it's almost the same, but in practice it's not true. So a simple thing, some may say that a glass of milk is very healthy, but there are other people who would say that no, milk is not healthy because I cannot drink milk. It makes me sick. It makes, you know, and so on and so on. So based on that, I try as much as possible to use all the information, because when I have an idea, I involve people to get all the information to see how each one of them look at the idea that I have and how they deal with it. And based on that, I kind of, yeah, think or design a composition of objects in a way that it becomes very direct and not like I'm trying to tell a story, you know. It's like the imagery will come to life only if the people yeah, use their own imagination, their own fantasy references in order to understand it. So for me, most of the time, I do not need to explain my work, and I don't like to explain because I know that people, they will come, because in my 30 year of practice, I've seen people come into the museum, looking at the work and being very confused, and then they go home and then they have something to think about. And then sometimes you do get reaction of people like, oh, when I saw it, I didn't understand, but now I understand, and stuff like that. So that's how it works with my work.
Okay, thanks. And I have a question here that's asking about, look at the presentation. The first installation involved persons in them. So, and the ones after that didn't have any persons. So are you now not using persons, or how come that change?
It's not a change. It depends. Sometimes I use persons and sometimes I don't. And I believe that the thing is that I'm always in search of a better way or a stronger way to present each theme or each work or each idea that I have. So it depends on the theme or idea that I have, that I use a person or I don't use a person in the work.
Yeah, and I have another question here. I have of a local attendee, and he's very sorry that in Curacao we don't get to see your work very often. There are not many expositions here. So the question is, when do you plan to have something here?
But that's the big that's the big problem in Curacao, is that most of the time I don't get the invitations, or I'm not involved in most of the things. That's one. The other thing is that what I've been doing myself is that I invite people to come to my studio in Curacao to look at my work. I think last year I had a kind of an open studio where I invited people to come and look at the work. And I want to do it again, because when I return back, I think by half November, I'll be back in Curacao, and I'll be finishing a series of work. And when I'm ready with that, I'll do the same thing again. So I hope that we can get much more people. But I do know, and I'm aware of that most of the time people don't see my work that much in Curacao, because it's most of the time because I am not invited for the exhibitions and all of that. So I'm not sure what's the reason why they don't invite me. So, but when I have my open studios, I do invite people to come to look at the work.
Yeah, well, you're welcome at Mongi Maduro Library, as you know, so we have an open space for you. Could you had something when you said culture, I don't know if I got it correctly, with culture you can measure the quality of life. Could you elaborate more about that? I think it also had something to do with your work with children.
Yes, one thing that's very important is that when I talk about culture, I talk about everything, visual arts, writing, music, everything that people do in order to survive or to express themselves, you know? So if you have good writers, if you have good visual artists, if you have good musicians, if you have good filmmakers, if you have good people who are doing farming and fishing and all of that, you will see that the quality becomes much more better, and the functioning and the structure of the society will become much more of a much more better quality and of much more content. And I always try to explain to people that, you know, if you read, you have much more references in knowledge of whatever you read about. Something that I do see a lot is that people on the island, not only in Curacao, but I do see it on the other islands, is because they lack the knowledge, or they don't have enough words how they can express themselves. They tend to get angry very easily, because you can defend yourself with words or whatever, and at a certain point they don't have words to defend themselves anymore, so they become angry. And it's the same with everything that you do. Everything that you have that you haven't developed enough, it will cause a problem. It will cause a problem because you haven't developed it in a way so that it can function in order to make things happen. And that's the thing with culture. Everything that has to do with culture, we need to develop them and give them much more content, so that the quality would be better, so that our functioning would be better, our mentality, because that's also something, the mentality should be better in order to make the island or the culture way better. And that's something that I do a lot in abroad, internationally, but I'm still on the island because I do believe that there is something very special on the island. And that special thing on the island, that's this naturally born thing in all of us, in order to be creative. And this creativity has make it possible for a lot of people to improvise in order to survive. So if we can turn this around into something, let's call it positive or educational, I think we can do a lot more than just surviving.
Yes. I think I have a question here, or actually a suggestion or a request from Laurina, who is also participating now. Um, s- um, I guess she's interested in a project that can be done, especially for children with, I guess, comportation, attitudes problem.
Mhm.
For example, at KOG, at the correctional facility we have here. So is there anything in that direction you're doing, future projects, or maybe I can for sure ask Lorena to contact us and we can put you two in contact with each other. We also have the extensive documentation of you at the Mohi Madura Library, which maybe can be used for that. But any thoughts or any future plans in that direction?
With GeoG, we have been doing a lot. We've been doing some work with GeoG, but I think that these past 2 years, I think, or maybe 3 years, we haven't, these past 2 years, especially because of this whole COVID situation. But before that, we have been doing some projects together with how it's called, Yeye Ise. So that is something that we've been doing, and we have even been talking to the director of, I'm not sure if she's still the director there, because right now, these past 2 years, everything is like quiet. But have even spoken about the possibilities of having structural projects with them. So they are part of our structure and ideas also. So that's it's there.
Okay, thank you. Tirzo, once again, I want to thank you very, very much for your availability and your time to do this. And everybody who would like to listen to this again, we will have the recording on our Facebook page. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon on our island, on Curacao, with an exposition. So thank you very much. Monique? Thank you.
Tirzo, thank you very much for coming to Rhode here. And yeah, as Diana told us, we have a lot of articles about your work, so I hope a lot of people will come to visit us to read about you, and that you can visit us again, and maybe in the future another webinar, an exhibition, and so forth. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. It's been my pleasure, and yes, I've been I'm very happy that the Mongimadur has this big documentation archive of my work, because I believe that it's like I said, it's very important to talk about the future heritage, and you know, most of the people, I want them to be aware that we don't need to invent the wheel again. So everything is in this documentation and archive at Mongimadur, so people can make use of it and try to as much as possible to use them for themselves and their own development and future.
Thank you.
Very good, Tirzo. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks again. Thanks everybody for attending. And we hope to see you in the next webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Much love.